Hello everyone, Bingo Bang Bang here, and in today's episode I thought we'd take a look at the Fantasy Age RPG before my actual play podcast, Tales Unfinished, shameless plug, plays it for our upcoming live show. Let's use that as a quick segue to remind you that on Saturday the 3rd of Feb we are putting on a live show as part of Wolverhampton Literature Festival. You can come and watch in person to help or hinder us with audience interaction, or by following the stream link. Tickets are pay what you feel, and you can find more information in the link below. Also, I am currently taking part in a charity drive being organised by Run DMG, featuring over 90 TTRPG content creators to help raise money for Doctors Without Borders to deliver humanitarian aid in Gaza. If you follow the link below, you can check out that fundraiser, which is running until the end of January and has already reached over $16,000 in funds thanks to the gaming community. Content creators have put up some great rewards, and I myself am offering to run an RPG session for you and up to 3 friends in whatever game system you want. If I don't already know it, I'll learn it. I've also written an adventure and character options for the Power Rangers role-playing game. There's still time for you to support a great cause and bag yourself some great rewards. So follow the link below and search Bingo in the rewards tab to find the items that I've put up for grabs, and if you do donate, support the red team. Now on to today's topic. What is Fantasy Age? So Fantasy Age is a D6 system, or more to the point, it is a 3d6 system. Those are the only dice that you're going to need to be able to play the game. The name itself is actually an acronym and stands for Adventure Game Engine, which is a system that was created by Chris Pramus, and Fantasy Age, as well as a number of games using the Adventure Game Engine, are published by Green Ronin Publishing. So you have your 3d6, and 2 of them need to be one colour, 1 of them needs to be a different colour, or just have some kind of an indicator, because one of those dice is classified as your stunt die. Now what this means is that any time that you are rolling dice, if you roll doubles, then you will get a number of stunt points equal to the number that is on that different coloured die. Stunt points are a really fun mechanic and really do contribute some great action economy to the game, but there's also just so much more depth to them than there is with a normal critical success, like an amazing acrobatics check where you land pinpoint exactly where you want to be after, 20 flips in the air or something. As much as that is cool, and I always fight for the rule of cool as much as I can in any of my games, what you've got is critical success that can be measured, quantified, and actually set you up for something a lot more interesting. So, to give you an example of this in combat, let's say that my character is attempting to hit someone, they succeed on their attack, and in doing so, they got 3 stunt points. So, I can now look at the basic stunt table for combat stunts, and I can look to see, okay, I have 3 stunt points to spend, what can I do with that? And I can either pick a stunt that costs me 3 stunt points, or I can take a stunt that costs 2 and one that costs 1, or I can take 3 stunts that cost 1 point each. Now, does this slow down gameplay? I would say yes, it does a little bit. You're always going to have that thing where you want to make sure that you're making the most out of your stunt points, that you're not losing out on any resources, and that you are just optimizing your choices in that moment. But there's not really any bad choices. I mean, Obviously, the higher the cost, the bigger the ability. But for example, the character that I'm playing is currently dual wielding pistols, and pistols take quite a while to reload. For one stunt point, I can use rapid reload, which lets me immediately reload a missile weapon as a free action. So that's a low cost stunt. And in all honesty, with my character, that's one that I just want to be using. I'm going to be using the pistols anyway. If we can speed things up by me not having to reload outside of stunts, then absolutely, let's do that. If I get more points, then maybe I'm going to try and disarm them, or maybe I'm going to try and use pierce armor. There's just a lot of really diverse things that you can do, but I have found that with this, yes, you can have a copy of the stunt tables out in front of you, but maybe just mark off a couple or highlight a couple that would be your character's sort of go-to. The idea with the stunts is that they are supposed to be these big, grand, cool-looking things that you can do to really make those heroic, action-filled sequences just feel more cinematic. So if you've got a couple of stunts that you use as a regular thing, then you can kind of play into those and you can use those as like your character's signature moves. Okay, now granted, reloading guns isn't exactly the coolest thing in the world, but he likes to shoot. So I'd like to make sure that he can. Now, combat stunts are all well and good, but don't you worry, we do get stunts when we are exploring, and we do get stunts when we are having social interactions as well. So you can try and impress people, you can read the situation, you can try and get some crowd appeal, pick up hidden messages, or you can deliver a hidden message. You can taunt. There's all sorts of things like that on the social ones. Exploration ones are quite fun. You can ready yourself for action so that you are good to go in combat. You can cover your tracks. You can just be aware of your surroundings. And you can also, for a nice cheap cost, give some assistance to one of your allies. So again, it's quite nice because it just shows that it's not a system that's developed solely for combat. The fact that you can pull off stunts in the role-playing scenes and in the exploration scenes that you are playing really helps to just show that it's a system that is for every part of the game. And for those of you who like to use magic with your character, yes, there are spell stunts as well. You can increase the power of the spell, you can make it cost less magic points to cast the spell, you can get more damage out of it, you can increase the duration of effects on it. You can also get like another secondary effect on it as well, like a shield, or you can disrupt other magic. There's a lot of really, really cool abilities and things that you can do with these spell stunts that really does just add an extra level to the spells that you're going to cast. Which is probably just as well because you can obviously fail at casting spells. And spells cost points, so you're going to want to make the most of them for as long as you can. Although in 2nd edition, I do believe that they have added a thing that when your spell fails, you can have it auto-succeed, but it heavily drains your magic points. I'm not 100% sure, haven't really looked into the magic rules for the character that I'm playing currently, as I've designed that one as a mage hunter. But given that 90% of my characters are basically just elf wizards, it's probably not going to be long before I start looking into magic. So that's the basic stunts. It's, as I say, quite a fun mechanic. Then in 2nd edition, they added in class stunts as well. So when you're creating your character, you are going to pick one of the 4 classes. You have envoys, mages, rogues, and warriors. You'll also gain talents and specializations along the way, so whilst those are the only 4 classes, and it might at first feel like that's going to be quite restricting, you can build a lot of different archetypes from the different specializations, backgrounds, and traits. But for every even-numbered level, you are going to get access to a class stunt. And for that little extra bit of character customization, at 6th, 12th, and 18th levels, you can choose a stunt from any class's list, not just from your own. That being said, if you cannot cast spells, then you won't be able to take on a stunt that works for magic. But again, it just opens up a whole new area for character creation and customization. One of the fun things that you can also do with this is you can take on a favored stunt. So, for example, the envoy, which, if I'm going to compare it to anything, I guess is kind of a bard, would take on a favored social stunt. And what you do is you can take a basic social stunt for 1 stunt point less than usual. Now, it has to be one that already costs 2, so that you're not just instantly auto-getting it. But it does mean that you can just reduce the cost of a basic stunt. Mages get that for spell stunts, rogues get that for exploration stunts, and warriors get that for combat stunts. It's just more ways that then you can have that like signature stunt that your character does, that thing that they're known for. Well, now they can do it for cheaper. And again, there are some big cost ones in here. But the most interesting thing that I've found with this is there is not a 6 cost stunt. The highest stunt point cost is 5. So if you do roll a 6 on there, well, that means then that you are going to be able to use a 5 and a 1. So you're always going to be doing 2 things off of that. Now, the only real rules to this is that you need to use your stunt points when you have them, otherwise you lose them. The stunt must fit the action that you are doing, so it cannot be linked to something completely absurd, i.e. you can't reload your fists, despite what Henry Cavill will tell you. The stunts must tell a story, so they have to be a part of what's happening there in the world and in that scene. They can't just be random. And you can't take the same stunt twice. So you can combine them all together, but that doesn't mean that you can reload 2 guns, as much as I would really like to be able to do that in combat. And I think that's fine. Personally, I think it stops you from min-maxing. Otherwise you could just spam the additional damage ones or the reduced cost on spells. Absolutely fine to have a 1 stunt limit on each of those items. But the biggest, most important thing, and it's something that we as players, we don't really need a lot of encouragement to do because we want to look cool, is you narrate the stunt. So you say what you're doing and you say how cool you look doing it. And that's pretty much it. That's how stunts work. So in my opinion, that system there is the main draw of Fantasy Age as a game system. The rest of it is what we've come to expect from pen and paper RPGs. This is by no means me downplaying the work that has gone into this game or the system. I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't like it. I definitely wouldn't be playing it with my actual play podcast if I didn't like it. But we do know that with the RPGs that are out there, when you are going through a fantasy setting, for example, there are certain things that you need to hit. There's certain beats that you need to have. because we like the familiarity. It helps us to pick up those games a lot quicker, and it helps us to get into them and just get stuck into the stories. Now, the character creation is also quite interesting because as you are going along and you are rolling up your stats, you are actually rolling them in the order in which they are going to be a part of your character. So, you have got your accuracy, communication, constitution, dexterity, fighting, intelligence, perception, strength, and willpower. And as you are rolling your dice to determine what those stats are, you are rolling your accuracy first, and then you are rolling your communication, then your constitution, then your dexterity, then your fighting, then your intelligence, then your perception, then your strength, and then your willpower. You cannot min-max that way. However, obviously you have a character design in mind, you have a build that you want to do. There are ways around that. You get to switch a couple of those roles around so that you can put, for example, if you need more strength, you can put strength into that area and you can take that lower dice roll and put that into something else that you might not need. As well as that, your backgrounds and your classes will also give you additional stat boosts as well. So you can kind of factor those in and you can make the character be what you want them to be. But it does make the character creation process on this a little bit tricky to understand. It takes a fair amount of reading, because when you are getting your talents and your specializations as well, you're also going to be rolling dice to determine those. You can pick them with your game master. You can have those conversations and pick what fits it better, but the proposed and suggested way in the rulebook is that you roll them. In terms of the character sheet itself, plenty of room to write things on, plenty of room for notes as well. Lots of room for your attacks, your spells, your weapons that you've got. It does even have a little area where you can write down your favorite and class stunts. It's a 2-page character sheet, and it does its job perfectly well. There's a lot of area to write on, and I do actually quite enjoy that on a character sheet. Especially if I'm playing a one-shot, I like to be able to have the notes there on that character. Or if I'm playing a short campaign, again, I like to have the notes there on that character sheet so that I don't have the time to lose them. So, where did the fantastic pun acronym for Fantasy Age come from? Well, Fantasy Age is actually an offshoot of the Dragon Age role-playing game, which was also designed by Chris Pramas. Important to note that in Fantasy Age, it's spelt with capitals for AGE, and Dragon Age is obviously after the BioWare video game, so that is just capital AGE. So in the Dragon Age role-playing game, pretty much everything was the same. The world was Ferelden, the characters were playing as Grey Wardens, obviously heavily themed into the worlds of the BioWare games themselves. And I think the only other real difference on it is that the stunt die back then was called the Dragon die. And yes, you could get a nice set of dice, which I still want. If I ever see one out in the wild again, I'm probably just going to get one of those sets because they do just look good. But yeah, outside of that, basically, this game was Fantasy Age First Edition. And the way that I was introduced to the role-playing game, I mean, I'd played Dragon Age as a video game, but for the role-playing game, I came across it by watching one of my favourite web series ever, which was Will Wheaton's Tabletop. I will say that a large number of the board games in my collection are things that I have seen on that show, and I do not regret that at all, because They had a lot of fun playing those games on there, and I have equally had enough fun playing them at home that it's entirely justified. So there was a two-parter on Tabletop where they played the Dragon Age RPG. Chris Pramus was the game master, and Will Wheaton was joined by Chris Hardwick, Kevin Sussman, and Sam Witwer. And although it was meant to be set in Ferelden, it just felt like a group of people just playing a fun role-playing game. You didn't have to know anything about the setting. You didn't need to know anything about the deep lore of the Dragon Age games. It was just a fun game. And then obviously the development went on from there for Fantasy Age and the adventure game engine itself to step away from being so heavily tied into the Dragon Age video game series. And I think that's a great idea. You know, you've got this fantastic game system that you have created and developed, and yeah, why does it need to be setting specific? Will Wheaton then went on to do another online series, which was called Titan's Grave, The Ashes of Volcana. This was a setting that was like sci-fi, fantasy, futuristic tech mixed with magic. There were dinosaur people, there were, you know, ancient prophecies and cyborgs. It was a really weird game, but it's my sort of thing. I like the weird stuff. The artwork as well on that show was incredible. But this is a setting that Will Wheaton had created himself, and then this got published as a campaign setting for Fantasy Age. Outside of that, Green Ronin Publishing also did Modern Age, which, as you can imagine, does what it says on the tin. Then there's Blue Rose RPG, which is a romantic fantasy in the world of Aldea. And then most recently, there's The Expanse RPG, which is based on the TV adaptation of the sci-fi book series by James S.A. Corey, which, fun fact, is the pen name of two collaborating authors. All of these games use the adventure game engine. So, realistically, all of these games exist because of a licensed tabletop role-playing game. I think that's pretty cool. They do have a community creator system on DriveThruRPG, so I'm sure that somewhere on there you will find other settings that you will enjoy. I imagine that I'm probably going to end up running some one-shots of Fantasy Age myself, so I will probably be creating some content for that. But bear in mind that I've done games based on like Bargain Hunt and Funhouse, so they're going to be weird settings. Whatever I create, they're going to be weird, okay? We know that. It's fine. But yeah, after watching those videos, it really did make me want to try this game. I think I had the quick start rules for Dragon Age role-playing game, which may still be available online. I'm not 100% sure. I know that the Expanse RPG quick start rules are definitely still available. So if it's something that you want to try out, I would recommend that you go over and look on the Green Ronin website or DriveThruRPG. Those are going to be your best places to go for those free quick start PDFs. But then please remember to support your local game shops as well. So if you are going to go and buy a physical copy, go for it. Do it through them. As for why our podcast switched over to Fantasy Age, a lot of that actually comes down to the whole massive fallout from Wizards of the Coast and the open game license shenanigan/nonsense. We were really struggling at the time to promote our show and to hype up our live game, ironically again for Wolverhampton Literature Festival last year. Whilst all of the OGL stuff was going on, there was silence from Wizards of the Coast themselves after the community had made their voices very heard, and they had shown how they didn't agree with the greedy moves that were being made. If you don't know what I'm on about with this, it's such a complex topic to try and explain, to make sure that I'm explaining it correctly, but Wizards of the Coast many years ago created the open game license, which allowed people to take the basic rules and frameworks of Dungeons and Dragons to make their own role-playing games. That is how games like Pathfinder were born. This happened at a time when Wizards of the Coast, and more specifically Dungeons and Dragons, was not profitable. This is around the 3rd edition, 3.5 edition. After that, obviously, a lot of other games have been created using the open game license. A lot of other extra content has been made using the open game license as well. However, some of that stuff that's been created technically didn't fall under the open game license, and other things that do fall under the open game license that Wizards of the Coast were not getting money from, with the most recent boom in D&D sales and popularity, how it came across to the community was that Wizards of the Coast felt that they deserved money from these things. So they put out a new version of the open game license with an amendment saying that basically, if you have created content using the open game license, then you owe us, or you will have to pay this when you hit over this amount of sales. But the worst part of it was that it said that they owned your content. So smaller content creators, publishers, creators of anything D&D related, or at least open game license related, were obviously very worried about their livelihoods. And here we are, a small D&D podcast called 16 Candlekeeps, trying to promote a live show as part of a literature festival, where I had a big old speech planned for that originally to tell people about how they could download the basic rules for D&D and they could play for free. And it was rough. I had poured a lot of time, effort, and my heart and soul into this live game. It was our first ever live performance game. We've done live streams before and we've done charity events before, but it was our first physical live show. It was, in fact, the first time for some of us playing an RPG physically together. Our podcast group came together just playing D&D first during lockdown. This is how big D&D was for us. Some people were reaching out saying during lockdown, anyone want to play D&D? We all joined up together, we played, we carried on through, we then set up our podcast, and we just kind of went from there. So it was a really big deal, and then it was just kind of tainted and poisoned by all of this negativity. We couldn't go online saying we're doing a D&D show because we don't want to be seen to support the greed from Wizards of the Coast and what they were doing with the open game license. And we don't want to seem like we are downplaying the effect that it's having on these other content creators. You know, the only thing that was easier for us, I guess, is that realistically, it wouldn't have affected us. We operated under the fan content policy in all things, except for, realistically, I guess, our name was a bit dodgy. It was 16 Candlekeeps. So we knew that we were going to have to drop that D&D tie. We changed out to Tales Unfinished. We needed a new game system. We still wanted to do a fantasy-based game because we did some trial games. You know, we went through a few different systems. I tried Monster of the Week for the first time ever, which was very fun. But we wanted that fantasy feel. It's where a lot of us felt more comfortable. So Fantasy Age is the system that won out. And honestly, I'm happy that it did. It's going to have those big epic moments. It's going to have that big storytelling. We barely ever used official D&D settings. The only real time that I did that was when I was building up to the live game. We were doing Spelljammer at the time. So we did Spelljammer Academy, and I tied it into our live game. What's the easiest way when you know that you're bringing this entire D&D thing to the end? You throw in an apocalypse. So we just hard reset our entire RPG universe, meaning that any of our previous characters are now fair game. We can bring them back. Any of our previous villains that myself or the other GM, Steve, have used, we can bring those back too. They are also fair game. And I am really excited to dive into this game. It is a little bit daunting that we are jumping straight in front of a live theatre audience, but I'm just glad that I get to enjoy that first game this time around as a player again. And if you want to see that game for yourself, don't forget that you can see that live show in person or online on Saturday, the 3rd of Feb, by clicking on the link below, and that will get you all of the information. I hope that you have enjoyed listening to me talk about the Fantasy Age role-playing game and all of the fun that stunts can present. As I say, look into those quick start rules if you did want to sort of have a demo of it. Feel free to watch our game. Equally, I really cannot recommend the Dragon Age tabletop episodes or Titan's Grave series enough. Go and check those out as well, because they are a lot of fun and they are really good at explaining the rules and how to actually play the game. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all of those nice things. Take care, and thanks again. Bye-bye.